Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today, I'm going to do something I have not done in a few weeks, and that is respect your time. So I'm going to keep this one short. Over the last 2 weeks, as you know, if you're keeping up with it, I've put out 2 podcasts, almost totaling 2.5 hours. If I was selfish, I could have totally spread those out within, probably a month or 2 worth of content and increase my total podcast numbers up. But I decided not to and decided to give you guys all the information in 2 large bites. Kind of like the way I eat. But because of that, I think today's is going to be a little shorter just because this releases on Labor Day. You guys are likely busy or having fun or whatnot. And it's a quickie. So if you do spend time listening to this on Labor Day, I wouldn't want to spend a lot of your time on podcasts because I'm sure I'm not the only one that you listen to. So respecting your time is what I'm trying to tell you. So let's get into it a little bit. So while we're on the topic, sorry, I just dropped something. While we're on the topic of podcasts and content creation, like as being a content creator, right? I've done a number of things in my time, whether it's social media or Instagram and YouTube and now podcasts, right? And so I'm a content creator of sorts, but I'm also a consumer, right? One of the things that I consume is just a varying number of podcasts. I do anything from, creative endeavors and sports stuff and fun stuff and more introspective type of podcast, right? And so one of the ones I was listening to this week, I was listening to Making It. So if you don't know, that's a podcast that has 3 guys, essentially Jimmy DiResta, Bob Clagett, I believe it's pronounced, and David Picciuto. They basically are 3 makers, as is the new term for people that kind of create things, and all of them have YouTube channels where they show you how to do things, right? I came across a number of them through different mediums where I was trying to learn something, or it was just a cool, interesting video about something they made. It all kind of adds up to the amount of knowledge and tips and implementations you can do when you're doing things for yourself, which some of you that follow my social media know that I do things of various natures, right? Right now, the big thing is woodworking, but that can likely change. So, why am I bringing this up? I was listening to their latest episode, and if you're curious to know what number that is, I guess you could go in there. But it's 337, I believe, is their latest. And so, Jimmy, specifically, if you don't know Jimmy is, like, everybody calls him, like, I think, like the grandfather of making. Like, his knowledge base is incredibly wide. You could see him doing things from like woodworking, right, to start. You can see him doing things like prop making. You can see him doing things like metal, working with metal, blacksmithing, restoring things. I can't even talk. It's really late, by the way. He's like restoring old 1800 bandsaws and making stuff. He even has a Netflix show called Making It. If you're interested in that, you'll kind of get to see that. His shop, which is quite impressive and I'm incredibly jealous of. But I digress. So he talks about the latest thing he's working on, and he's got this like giant Buddha head thing that he's working on, right? And it's just a thing for a customer, a client. And one of the things that I find hilarious, and I found hilarious in the thing, is like he's talking about this giant Buddha head that he's making literally from scratch out of foam and epoxies and resins, and he's doing CNC work, and he's doing all this stuff to make it work, right? He's taking samples online and looking for different inspirations, right? Well, one of the other things about Jimmy, apart from all the numerous things I just mentioned, is that Jimmy has a love for old cars. And like bandsaws, he collects old, I think they're considered like square body trucks. I'm not a big American car guy, but I think that's the proper terminology. Sorry if it's not. So he's always restoring trucks, and he picks up these trucks. He lives on the East Coast, so there's probably a ton of these trucks that have rust and been neglected in farms and giant properties for years and years. So he's picks them up and he little by little tinkers with them and fixes them and improves them and whatever, right? And so I was listening to the podcast, and Jimmy's talking about this truck that he's restoring. And he's talking about, like, Jimmy's very, very funny at the way he phrases things, by the way. I suggest you kind of listen to his podcast because he's very funny. He's jovial. And he's talking about this truck he's restoring. And so Jimmy is not a big car guy, right? He doesn't have a lot of background in vehicles, but he's still willing to learn and is open to it. But he's got a buddy of his that comes over, and they're trying to crank this thing and start this thing for the first time, and it hasn't been started in God knows how long. And they're, troubleshooting with old fuel and old hoses and its carburetors, which are alien to me. And they're tinkering with things. And then his buddy, who is a car guy, he's like, well, take a look here. And he's talking about how this starter is creating an arc because it's basically cracked in the wrong spot, and the electricity that goes to it is creating an arc, which basically means it's the electrical is creating a circuit, which basically means it's lighting on fire. That's my very limited electrical work, by the way. That's my Achilles heel. But let's get back on topic. So while talking about this, like, his buddy's like, well, let's pop this on and get a new starter. And Jimmy kind of gets his little whiny kid voice. He's like, I don't wanna, like, well, let's just leave it. And he's more willing to take this truck in to get it worked on. Like, he would rather have paid somebody to do it. And considering it's like a giant truck that has all the room in the world to get under it, right? Versus my car, where literally I can stick a finger into the engine bay and I cut myself. So it's just so interesting, because a guy that's making props from scratch and restoring things, like he's jumping into like CNC lathing work and shop bot stuff, and he's got CNC machines for wood, and he's got all this crazy technology. He's got lasers, and he's got all kinds of stuff that just he tinker with and learns. I mean, he's learning all of this stuff. His knowledge base, it amazes me, because I'll go back and try to do something I haven't done in a while, whether it's epoxy work or woodworking or whatever, and I'll go back and try to do that same thing. And because I haven't done it in a while, like, I have to remind myself on how to do things. I got to go back and learn a little bit to refresh my memory. And the fact that he can do all of these things and still maintain them in his brain fascinates me. But my point to all this is I'm trying to draw a picture for you, ladies and gentlemen, about the concepts of what's happening here, right? He's a guy that is incredibly adept to all of these other things, and he's incredibly open to learn, right? But when it comes to certain things that are just outside of his comfort zone, he's like, nah, I don't wanna. I'll pay somebody to do it. And he does it in such a funny, comical way. And I find it hilarious because, like, I jumped into vehicles at a young age, so I was too stupid to know any better, right? What is that? That young, dumb, and full of you fill in the blank, right? That's the saying. And I jumped into that car that I have now that I'm very well versed in, the Z. I jumped into that car in my early 20s, and not knowing anything about cars besides doing an oil change. It was crazy to me to know that I've gotten this far, and that honestly is in thanks to the internet, right? If it wasn't for the internet, 90% of the things I know, I wouldn't know. But that's just to say that I was so unaware of what I was getting myself into that I just jumped into it. And that I'm not trying to poo-poo Jimmy, because I think that's what he does with everything, right? The fact that he's going into this realm is an example of that, right? He's not comfortable with it. He doesn't like it. So therefore that fear kicks in, and he's like, I'm just going to take it into somebody, right? And so I was thinking of how crazy that is for a guy like Jimmy, who jumps into things that, like, I don't even know what to even start doing with the shopsmith. Like, there's basically a machine that does like a lathe metal, or how to start with a CNC plotter and cut things out of wood, right? It's totally different paradigms every single way you go about it. And he's like intimidated by the starter, which is incredible, because to me a starter is just basically you disconnect a couple connectors, you unbolt it from the transmission, you put the new one back in. It's like Legos, right? And so it made me think, and I hope Jimmy, which I doubt he will ever listen to this, but I'm not poo-pooing him. I'm looking at the greater scope of what's going on here, and that's take these podcasts from. Sometimes, like, you get the motivation based on the things you're coming across. The craziness is, like, you look at that situation with Jimmy and he's like overwhelmed with the starter, but for me, who's aware of the thing, is not that big of a deal. And the truth is vice versa, right? Jimmy knows so much more than I do about all these other things I just described. And to me, it'd be overwhelming. Like for me, like I talked about 20 seconds ago, my kryptonite really is electrical. I hate electrical. I will always pay somebody for electrical, and I know I'm likely getting screwed, but I'd rather pay somebody to do it right, because I don't want to be in a situation where like I'm hearing arcing in the wall somewhere and then something's on fire all of a sudden. I did my own electrical when I did the kitchen, but that was just basically relocating wires and reinstalling what I took down. It wasn't anything new, right? I would not be comfortable paying somebody or installing 210s somewhere in my house, right? Like I would have somebody do it for me, because I don't want to basically light my house on fire, right? The fact that we have electrical lines running through our homes and they do what they're supposed to do and things aren't just lighting on fire is amazing to me. And I say that because I've worked for companies that do construction, and I've seen how shoddy the work can be. So and the inspectors that go and do these jobs aren't necessarily like, care as much. But anyways, I'm going to our far off topic here. The reason why I brought all this up, it's sometimes good in life to just jump in the deep end. I use that phrase a lot because sometimes you have to jump in the deep end. When I went from very limited woodworking experience to saying I'm going to redo my kitchen, that was me jumping in the deep end. And it worked out because the type of person I am, right? Some of that is getting to know who you are. But also some of that is not quitting. Some of that is dealing with perseverance. Some of that is being just a certain level of stubborn enough and stupid enough to go for it. And I think at times in life, you need to take that young, dumb, and blank approach to life. Because the more you know about something, the more the fear paralyzes you of it, right? You can buy a car as a young individual and never know anything about cars or know what a car is doing, and all you know is that you turn it on and you put fuel in it and you move on. And so that ignorance of what is really happening doesn't really affect you until you realize that there is something spinning in your engine at 3,000 RPM, and it is only contingent upon it being lubricated, possessing enough combustion, and to move you forward, along with, not even including, by the way, the transmission, the way that works, the fact that your tires are keeping you on the road only dependent on how great that grip is and how good the tire condition is, that the fact that the only way that you're stopping on the road is by some archaic version of two items pressing on a disc. Basically, it's like taking it's like taking your hand and pressing on something to slow it down. Like, this is the way our cars stop, right? And if you didn't know any of that, it wouldn't have affected you, because ignorance is bliss. But in knowing that, it makes you a little bit more hesitant to know what's happening and know that something could go wrong, right? And so in life, sometimes remember, this is always with the caveat of having a certain level of logic involved here. So this wouldn't apply to me in a situation where you can be in danger, right? Like you don't want to walk into the alleys of the favelas if you're a tourist in Brazil, because there's no benefit there, there's no payoff there. It's all risk, no reward. There's really nothing great that comes from that as doing that, right? But when it comes to learning a new endeavor, when it comes to trying something new, when it comes to doing something that makes you slightly uncomfortable and learning about that thing or doing that thing, it might be a better situation for you to take a ignorance is bliss view on it and jump on in. Because otherwise that fear will slow you down. That fear will stop you and paralyze you in your tracks. And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I want to keep it tight today. I wanted to basically just give everybody some content. But some of these are like gems to me, right? Some of these where I'm just living my day-to-day life and I can hear or see or experience something and have like I could take a step back from being in the box of the situation and have a different perspective on it, and I can bring it to you folks on this podcast. It's almost like a gift to me at times. So when those things occur, I feel like I do need to jump on the opportunity, right? It's like if whatever you believe in, whether it's God, the universe, fate, whatever, it's like you're running one of those triathlons, and they're the one behind you, and they're running towards you, giving you the stick, whatever that thing's called. They're running towards you, giving you the stick, giving you like, hey, go, 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 take it and run. And I would kick myself in the ass if I didn't take it and run with it, right? What is the saying? You don't kick a gift horse in the mouth or something like that. Whatever that saying is, like you have to go for it, and that's what some of these are for me. Like they're gifts, so I gotta go with it. I gotta keep that marathon, the triathlon going. Is it triathlon? No, relay race. Dang it, I messed that whole analogy up. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know the routine. We'll talk, hear, listen, whatever it is, next week.